Hello, if you've been here before, welcome back. If not, hi, my name is David. I make videos talking about media that I want to talk about. This is my reading wrap-up for the month of July, or a partial reading wrap-up, that is. I will be talking about the books that I read in July, but I will not talk about the books that I'll be reading for Isabel's Summer / Readathon, which is coming up starting tomorrow, as the day that I'm filming this on Thursday. Those books I will cover on a separate video because that's going to be a marathon of me reading, but also I will be traveling for like a hot minute. I'm visiting my sister for her birthday in Georgia, and so that's going to give me some time to read as well, more books than I usually am able to read during the month. But for now, this is the books that I read just in general. You know, like last week, I'm joined by a junior, Lil Todile, and then I'm joined now by Amphi. Not very imaginative a name. I'm not good with names, but Amphi is a plushie I've had for a long time. I love Ampharos. So this month I read about 8 books so far that are not part of the readathon, and I'll say it. I was going to say it's been a good month. I'm expecting the books that I read for the readathon are going to be really, really good, and the first half of the month's books were really good as well. But the latter half kinda was a little disappointing, but started off really good. Maybe in comparison, it's not as good now or the last few books, but we'll get into that. Anyways, as always, we go to the past where I talk about the first half of the month. The first book that I read in July was The Tyrant by Cormorant by Seth Dickinson. This is the third book in the Masquerade trilogy / series. Like there is going to be a fourth book allegedly, but this was published in 2020, and I should have checked like if Seth Dickinson has said anything or has a website or something like that talking about a fourth book. But either way, 2020, it's 2026 right now. It's been 6 years since this book came out, and the fourth book has not been published yet. I don't know when. I should have checked that, but whatever. The Masquerade trilogy, we'll say. I've been reading on the off months that I've been reading the Poppy War trilogy. I have absolutely adored how this series has panned out. I gave this a 5 out of 5, it's been a really good reading month so far. And this is a continuation off of what has happened in Monster by Cormorant. The sheer mass of what is happening in this book is just absolutely astounding. And I feel very proud that I was able to read this because it's like 650 pages, and I tried reading it within a week. And that was difficult, but I did it because also it was really fun. It's amazing. The plot is really good towards the latter half. The first half is fine. It gets a little slow because they're stuck on Crippinoak, but it makes sense why they're stuck. It's not like I am yelling at the book, like, get on with it. But it makes sense because they're like Baru is stuck between a rock and a hard place kind of moment, especially dealing with because at the end of Monster in Crippinoak there was a plague that was released, and so she wants to deal with that plague. That kind of slowed down the story, but whatever. This is coming off of, like I said, Monster Bar Carmen, where Baru has finally found the sorcerer cult, the Cancrioth, I believe is how you pronounce it, which uses cancer to give themselves powers, uranium and stuff like that, radiation. And so she wants to use this Cancrioth to tear down the Masquerade, which she's been wanting to do since the get-go, right? What I really like about the Cancrioth is that once she finally gets there, they are equal parts very different type of organization that Baru has encountered. They are really weird, terrifying, and have magic, which she has not encountered, but also very similar in terms of the leaders of the Cancrioth have interfighting and have their own agendas, and they keep brushing up against each other. And so Baru has to navigate that she knows how to navigate that, but also the added layer of they also do sorcery. So that's kind of fun. I really like how Baru's relationships develop here, especially leading up towards the last act. You can see how this character starts to dislike her. You can see how that character starts to ally with her and stuff like that. Like, the side characters have not been wasted because, so the first book, Trader Bar Carmen, was just in her point of view. And then the second and third book has different points of view with Baru. and also chapter titles. Like the chapters have titles, which did not happen in Trader. And that's one thing that this series does. Like I've seen this in a handful of a series where it's a trilogy has like the first book or movie or whatever its own thing, and then the second, third are its own story. And it's like it is a full story overall, but the first book is a little disconnected from the second and third one, which feels more like duologies of each other than a continuation of the first book. Like Inkheart trilogy, that happens. Like Inkheart itself is its own thing, and then Inkspell and Ink Death feel like a duology. So that happens here. That's just something I noticed, not a knock against this book at all. But yeah, at least in this series, Baru continues to be absolutely amazing. I've been really happy that this series I've been reading along with Poppy War, both main characters of both series have been absolutely amazing. Rin in Poppy War was an amazing tragic character, like she could not catch a break. Baru was a wet mop of a woman, and I love her so much. I would always say I support women's wrongs, because when Baru is doing stuff, it's like girly, stop. But also it works out for her even when it doesn't. When something goes wrong for her, it's still something good happening to her, and that's kind of really fun to see. Like the way that she's been able to weave stuff around her to protect her, and even if it fails, when she fails, it's she still manages to use that failure as a success, and that's just really fun to read. Yeah, Baru keeps being the center of the story, and I really enjoy that because this story feels so big. Like there's so many groups of people, so many individuals doing their own thing, but it really feels like Baru has thrown a rock into a puddle and has caused a lot of ripples. And everyone's like, why is this woman all of a sudden doing things? When it's been like years and years of almost matched groups of people. Now Baru is here and she's shaking the table, and I really enjoy seeing that and seeing everyone else react to her shaking the table. So I'm really excited. I hope the fourth book comes out sometime soon enough that I will remember what's been happening so far. But so far, at least finished this series. Claps, everyone clap. I finished this series. The next book that I read was an audiobook, which is Back to Before, which is book 40.5 of the Animorphs series by K.A. Applegate. This is part of the spin-off series Megamorphs, number 4. This is the fourth book of this. And this is the last Megamorph as well, because I believe Animorphs itself is 54 total books, and then there's some spin-offs. There's Megamorphs, and then there's the Chronicles, and each of those have 4. This is the last of the Megamorphs. Megamorphs is a slightly longer version of the books. Each of the Animorphs books in the main story has the one point of view character throughout the entire thing, and is about 150 pages long on the physical book. Megamorphs is about double the length of that and has multiple different points of view. And so to me, I kind of compare it to how some animes have like an anime movie that is like a side story that doesn't affect the main plot of the anime itself, but it's still enjoyable to watch. And yes, this Megamorphs was really good. Don't don't make me try to remember the first Megamorph names. I remember what happens in them. I did not really care for the first one, and the second one was the dinosaur one, and the third one, dinosaur one was pretty good, and the third one was really fun, which was when they did time jumping. They went to different points of time. This book is an alternate universe, alternate timeline type of story. And that was really fun. I forgot to write down my rating. I think I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. It's one of the best books that I've listened to of Animorphs so far. And there's been some really good books as well. Like I said, this book has different points of view of different characters, and so that was really fun to see again. I guess it sucks that we won't be able to see more of these different points of views, because now it's just going to be the regular stories, and then the Chronicles is the Alamist point of view, but whatever. The Alamist here, it's again the cosmic conflict between the Alamist and Kryak, and there's like this deal that happens between them, and Kryak sends his minion, the Drode. The Drode is a really fun character. He's like a trickster type of character. He sends the Drode to trick Jake, the main leader of the Animorphs, into letting them go into a alternate time period of what happens if the five main characters, did not go into the construction site, which got them to meet the alien that gave them powers to Animorph. What happens then? And I thought coming in that was going to be one way, but the way that it developed was a lot more interesting. I thought it was going to be something along the lines of like things change, but in the end they all meet up anyways, and sort of like this story of like, oh, if things changed, everything would have been the same. No, that's not what happened. It's also kind of showing how much has changed in the story because Tobias is no longer a Nothlit. He's no longer just a hawk, but he is still with his not abusive, but neglectful, that's the term, neglectful uncle and aunt. And so, because of that, he is being courted by the Sharing, which is the organization that the Yeerks have created to infiltrate humanity. And so we experience how the Sharing seduces people to join their group, and that's really fun. Why is it still here? Axe's story is also really interesting because we see how he escapes if he never had the aid of the other Animorphs, and his story is really fun as well because he's now learning about Earth all by himself, and the things that he does is really interesting, and it really shakes it up. And then the other characters have similar storylines as usual. Marco still thinks that his mom is dead, and there's a moment where Visor 1 appears in Marco's mom's body, and he chases her and thinks that that's weird. You know, his mom's alive, but she's dead. Oh no, she's actually part of an alien. But we don't really get into that, unfortunately. But we've already gone through a whole story arc with Marco's mom, so I'm fine about that. Also, there's a moment, I guess, Marco and Rachel begin dating. They don't quite address that a lot. But then there's also some anomalies. Like they mentioned that Marco's mom, or Visitor One, sorry, just appeared all of a sudden. And so all the other Yeerks that she's working with are very confused about like what has been happening. And then also Cassie begins feeling something weird. And we eventually learn that Cassie is, I forget the term, but she's like out of time. Like she's a constant, like you know, in like in Spider-Verse they have like the anchor points or something like that. She's something similar to that, where it's implied that the Elemist set things up in the past, stacked the deck as the Drode had said, where he made the son of Elfangor, which is Tobias, Elfangor's brother, Axe, the son of the host body of Visor 1, Marco, and this time static person, Cassie, made sure that those four are in a group of six that are fighting against the Yeerks. And that's implied there, and I don't know if we're going to touch on that any further. I don't know if we're going to touch on Cassie being this special outside of time person, but it's fun that it's there. I like that. And I like that Jake and Rachel are not part of that like group, but they just happen to be there because Jake is almost dating Cassie, and then like Rachel's with Jake, but also has a connection to Marco and Tobias, etc. But I like that implication, you know? So some really fun new type of storylines that I did not expect coming from this alternate timeline story. And I was really happy with that, especially, you know, exploring what happens with the Sharing, exploring what happened with Axe. Really fun. The next book that I read was Utopia Avenue by David Mitchell. Okay, this book, David Mitchell, I've read a lot about. I've read Cloud Atlas, Slate House, Bone Clocks, Number 9 Dream. Honestly, after reading this, I was like, I need to read the rest of his repertoire because all of it connects. It's really hard to talk about this book and David Mitchell in general. So I'm gonna try. I did buy the rest of his repertoire. I might read his and reread those other books that I've read, and then read those new ones next year in publication order. Maybe we'll see. But anyways, this book I gave a 4.75 out of 5. It is the story of a band in London that was created in 1967, who was like a combination of psychedelic and folk music, called Utopia Avenue. And it's a story of its three main characters are the songwriters, Jasper, Dean, and Elf. And then we have the drummer Griff and the manager Levin. Griff and Levin aren't like super main characters, but they're definitely very present throughout the entire story. I really like that each chapter is called one of the songs that they will eventually make, and it is sort of like watching how their lives progress as they make this band and tour and meet fans and make connections, stuff like that. I really like how each chapter is named for a song, and within that chapter is what inspires that song, and that's really fun. Especially as you at the beginning, or like in each section, it shows like a picture for like the chapters, like a CD that has it, and it shows like the chapter name, and then in parentheses, the character's last name, as in who wrote the song. And so each chapter is just how each song came about and what inspired each song. And I really like that felt inspired. And since these three characters are the songwriters, they're the point of view characters throughout the entire thing. However, there's one chapter for Griff, one chapter for Levin that I liked that they was there, but I get why these two characters aren't there all the time, or the point of view character. I get it. Jasper was really good character. I really liked his storyline. Elf was my favorite character. She had an interesting point of view. And then Dean was Dean. He's just a guy. And so I was like, oh, whatever, you know? I liked him, but it was nothing I've never seen, you know? David Mitchell does this thing where every single one of his books that I've read so far somehow connects to each other. I started reading with Cloud Atlas, and then I read Number 9 Dream, and then Slade House, and then Bone Clocks, and this is the most recent one. This is also his most recently published book, which came out in 2020. This one and this one both came out in 2020. Oh, wow. Also, I just wanted to know before I forget, this is a ARC version of this book, so there are a lot of like printing mistakes that I was like, yeah, this is an ARC, so there might be just some mistakes. There's just a lot of quotation mistakes that I noticed, but it is what it is. But anyways, what was I saying? David Mitchell connects all of his stories, and here I was like, okay, how is this story going to connect to his other books? One, something that I didn't notice, didn't remember, he has a book that I just bought that I have not yet called The Journal of Jacob Dezut, I believe, which is the story of Jasper's great great grandfather or something like that. And they mention him in this book, but I didn't catch that until like after I finished and after I bought all the rest of the books. So that's one connection that I should have known from the get-go, but I didn't. Whatever. Early on, Jasper listens to a recording of the Cloud Atlas Sextet from Cloud Atlas. And so that was like, whoa, okay. And then also, a little later, Elf begins dating Louisa Ray from Cloud Atlas. And I was like, okay, cool. And then also, Jasper has this sort of entity in his mind that's trying to kill him, and he meets Marinus from the Bone Clocks, and that is a whole arc as well. Now, I do want to say, if I had not read the Bone Clocks, if this was the only David Mitchell book I had read, it would still be really good. But whatever the fuck was happening with Jasper would be so confusing and so kind of alienating that I would not know what is happening. And so I feel like if I had not read Bone Clocks, I'd be a little lost. But because I did, I really liked those sections. So I'm on both sides, you know, like I can see I have really enjoyed this, and I really enjoyed the Bone Clocks portion. But also, if I hadn't, what I've felt, you know, the structure of some of the chapters got a little repetitive, where it would bookend things, and so it would be like one section of the chapter is the present, and then one section the past, present, past, until the end of the chapter, where the present and past meet sometimes, or it's just the end of each story, you know? Like some chapters, it would be Jasper's present, and then it would talk about his past when he was growing up and why he has like this entity in his head. Some other chapters would be when they are traveling and they're in one location, and then in the past they're in a different location and they like meet up in the center. That got a little predictable, and so I was sort of reading some of these chapters and I was like, okay, we get it, I get it. But it wasn't that bad. I just started seeing this structure again and again. I was like, okay, come on, we change it up. And so it's not a 5 out of 5 because of those structural things, and also because of this bone clocks thing. And I did really like the characters. I loved all the characters really a lot. I just didn't really connect with that story as much as I wanted to, but it's still an amazingly written story. Like after reading it, I find myself thinking about it again and again and wanting to relive with these characters. I did not quite enjoy the ending emotionally, but like technically pretty good and makes sense as to why. Like I'm not going to talk about why the band it dissolves, but it does dissolve at the end. Like it says it here that the story ends in like a year. Like the band is only active for like a year, and so it's sort of like going into that, going into the last few chapters. I was like, okay, I know that it's going to end, but the way that things are happening, it doesn't feel like it's going to end in some way. But when it did end, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I don't quite enjoy it, but I get it, and I like what it does with the story. But emotionally, personally, I didn't quite enjoy it. So that was also one part of it. But still, amazing book. David Mitchell, amazing writer. Also, shout out to Rue with the Books, who inspired me to read this book because he said it was one of his favorite books, and I love David Mitchell, so I was like, yeah, let me read it. The next book that I read in July was The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. Okay, I don't know when this video is coming out. I don't know if this is going to be after or before. I'm doing a read along with my friend Steph over at Coffee Over Apples for this book. She and I are going to be reading this book and talking about it on a live show on August 7th. Like I said, I don't know if this video is coming out before or after that, but yes, if it's before, come join us. If it's after, did you have fun with our live show? Anyways, Sword of Kaigen, we wanted to read it because, well, I wanted to read it because Steph had recommended to her entire channel Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang, which I read last year and was one of the best books of last year that I read. And so I wanted to read her other work, which I've heard a lot of good things about. And so Seth and I talked and we were like, let's do a read along for this book because we love Blood Over Brighthaven and heard a lot of good things. So this lived up to the hype. This, I don't know if I said it, this is a 5 out of 5. This is a 5 out of 5. This is out of 5 out of 5. This is almost a 5 out of 5, 4.75. Amazing series of books. Also, I forgot about Animorphs. That was also really good. This is the best book I've read this month so far. And then looking at the books that I have the rest of the month, oh my god, I'm so excited. I'm saying it again. This month has been amazing so far. So this is the story of the Matsuda family, mainly Mamoru, the 14-year-old heir to the family who is training to be a sword fighter, warrior with his father and the people in his village. And he is trying to learn the technique of the Whispering Blade, which is a super secret technique. It's also the story of his mother, Misaki, who used to be like a vigilante type of fighter, but left that world so she could start a family with her husband. Also, this world is has the same similar magic system to Avatar: The Last Airbender, where there are some people who have water bending, fire bending, or air bending. There's no earth bending, and then those are people who are born with that magic, and then there are people who gain a magic and they can get super strength, able to manipulate light, and able to manipulate sound, which we don't get anyone from that, but we do get some from the light. We also don't get that much from the strength. But the Masuda family are Jijaka, Theonites with the ability to control water, and they live in a world that is very similar to ours, but flipped in both the map. Let me pull it up. The map is just our world, but flipped, which is really fun. And it's set 5,000 years in the future, or it's set in 5,329, I think I saw. 5,369 is the year. And it's sort of like a alternate history, alternate universe, sci-fi, futuristic, but also fantasy story. And if that sounds complicated, it's not, because once you start reading it, you like get it. And I got it, and I loved it. And not only that, it is also sort of the idea of like what changes in the world if people who have been historically oppressed, mainly people from Africa and Asia, in this world they're named something different, but geographically those people, what if they gain this type of power, the ability to control water, control air, control fire? What happens to the socioeconomic situation in the world? And then what happens 3,000 years later, or 5,000 years later, if you're counting from the beginning, whatever. That's really fun because Kaigen is what would be Indonesia, I believe, in the world, and they are a leading power along with Yama, who would be most of northern and central Africa. And then southern Africa are also big powers. Actually, the main Kaigen area would be Japan and Korea geographically, and then parts of China. And then the other power is China, Russia, Eurasia type. Yeah, I don't know. They have colonized part of Indonesia. That's why I got confused there. But anyways, really interesting setup, really interesting construction of the world. And then the story is so intimate and so emotional. We're following Misaki and Mamoru as Mamoru learns that the Empire has been lying. There's a lot of propaganda. You are not immune to propaganda. And Misaki, who has learned how the world is and knows that the Empire could lie and has lied, but she just wants to live in her family and do right for her family. But the things that she's seen and learned from her past as a college student in a different country helps her see past the lies and propaganda that her son, her eldest son, begins to realize as well. And so that's a really interesting storyline. It's so intimate for such a large and vast world building. Such an intimate story is, I would say, a risk. But even though it stays within this one character, we do get a wide grasp of the entire world, especially because of Misaki and her past in different countries. And so that was really well made there. And eventually, we do begin to see conflict between nations and how that affects their small village. I did not know this when I came in, but the Sword of Kaigen title itself is actually referencing, because this is the map of Kaigen itself. This is it. The Sword of Kaigen is the peninsula, I believe it's called, that is at the northeast portion of, or actually it's because also the compass is southwest portion of Kaigen, and it's like a peninsula that protects the rest of the internal areas of Kaigen from the Rangan Union, which is their neighboring country. And so it is sort of like the first defense that the country has, and they're living there. What happens when they are attacked? And that's an amazing story that unfolds, and it's just absolutely beautiful. There are some moments, I will say, where the world building, the lore gets a little bogged down. Like I'm reading, like there's a lot of information here that's not going to affect much of the story for me, but still beautiful, beautifully written, beautifully structured. Everything is just amazing and absolutely adored it. I cried at different things, parts of the story. And it is, like I said, science fiction and fantasy together. It's mostly fantasy with a science fiction setting, because the fantasy, because there's sword fighting and then there's water bending. It's mostly ice bending, honestly. It's like water turned into ice. Yeah, whatever. There's a long, long section of sword fighting happening between the Matsuda family and the attacking nation. And I think, in a different hand, this fight scene would go on a long time and would drag. But this long fight scene sustains itself and is intense and really good the entire time. There's no moment in this really long section that I got tired of it. I was like, something's always happening, something's always changing and shifting, and you really feel that. And so this book, with how thick it is, I breezed through it because I was just devouring it of how good it was. So, yes, Sword of Kaigen, amazing. Probably the best book that I read this month. I'm filming this during the day, and there's a glare on my books now. Here we go. The next book that I read in the month of July was Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt by Ben Reeves, which is the book of the month pick for July. I will be transparent. I tried recording this. I had recorded this for the first half, and I wasn't happy with how I talked about it because I did need to sit with this book a little bit more to be able to talk about it. I gave this a 4.25 out of 5. I set it up for failure and it surprised me, but still was what I expected it to be. I found this book on Book of the Month. I will say the Book of the Month picks for July were not that good. And so this is the one book that I saw that I was like, this might be interesting to me. I don't know, but at least I know it'll be short and I can read it quickly and will not spend too much time on it. Also, because I knew I was going to read Sword of Kaigen, that was going to take up a lot of time as well. Why is this glare? No, that's not the glare. That's just the color. Anyways, I wanted to speed through this book quickly, just read it quickly, because I knew that it was going to make me cry. I know that it wants to make me cry, and I'm not a super emotional person, so I don't know if it would have succeeded at that or not, but I was going to still find out, and I read it, and yeah, it did make me cry. But there are some books that I've read where the attempt to make you cry feels a bit manipulative, and I didn't quite enjoy that in that book. In this book, I was surprised with how not manipulative it was into making me cry, and that was good. So this is about a representation of death named Travis, who is living in England, and he becomes involved in a family's life of a single mother and a young daughter. Half of this story is Travis's point of view as a character experiencing life with the mother and daughter. The other half is Travis as Death experiencing the world as a narrator. He straddles a line between being an omnipotent narrator and a actual character. And I feel these sections where he is an omnipotent narrator are a lot more interesting than when he is a character. I feel like his character and characterization is a bit unsure. There's some great little vignettes, is what I'll call them, of Ben. Sorry, Ben is the author. Travis experiencing other lives, and there's one really great little section of a group of siblings dealing with the death of their mother in their mother's funeral, and that one I loved that section, and I knew that it would not continue more, but I like it felt like a little tiny short story that you could tell a lot about in such a small amount, and that was very well written. I really liked that aspect. But when Travis is being a character, he felt very unsure. There's this concept that is trying to be explored here of what if death is wants to feel emotion, wants to feel love, joy, and everything. However, because death is everywhere, death is overwhelmed by the good. Everything was good and nothing hurt. That overwhelming emotion makes him feel numb. And I kind of like that concept of like, okay, yeah, this death wants to feel something good, wants to feel something emotional, but he is constantly bombarded with tragic stories, sad stories, happy stories, angry stories, that it is all too much for him, that he has to become numb. However, in execution, it's not the best for me. I got the concept and I got what was trying to be said, but his numbness can either be read as uncaring or can either be read as like too overwhelmed and he's struggling to focus on something, but it doesn't land on a single thing that it wants to be. And I found that like he was unsure as a character. Like there were some sections where when he talked, the as dialogue, the character he had like a personality, and in some sections he was just very monotone. And I don't feel like that was what the author wanted to do in this book. I felt like that was something inconsistent that I noticed. But at least it was not manipulative in wanting to make you cry, because some stories want to make you cry. I also liked this interpretation of death, conceptually, like I said, is sandwiched in between the characterization of death in the book Thief by Marcus Zuzak, which I've read. That death has a distinct personality that is still numb. And that character felt very, very sure. And I've not experienced it, I've not read it, I've not watched it, but I do believe that the character of Death in Discworld, by I believe it's Terry Pratchett, is a more character, like flawed character, versus the omnipotent narrator of Book Thief versus the both parts of that in Travis. I believe Death is more of like actual like archetypical character. You know what I mean? But again, I have not consumed that, so I can't fully say. But I feel like this character of Death is pulling from both traditions in a way. So I don't know. That's just something that I noticed. Also, very aggressively British. Not a bad thing, obviously, but very aggressively British. The next book that I read was Warrior, Princess, Assassin by Bridgit Kemmerer. This is a book that I had to read for a book club, which just seeing it as is, I would not have picked it up by myself. And I did give it a 2.5 out of 5. It is less that this book was flawed or bad. It was more of a taste thing. So this is about Jory, a princess, who is about to be married off to Kai, the warrior, who's a king. In their political marriage, they're promised to help aid each other's kingdom in a war against a third enemy kingdom. And at the same time, Jory's childhood best friend Asher, sorry, it's warrior, princess, assassin. I was like, warrior's down here, and it's over here. Kai, Jory, and assassin is Asher, who is Jory's childhood best friend, who is tasked with killing both of them before they can consummate their marriage and seal the deal. I turned him around because his butt was showing. There you go. I liked that at the beginning. I liked what was happening. First off, Jory felt like conceptually she's a naive character, and she's learning about the world and learning what she's been told is a lie and stuff like that. Not so much propaganda, like in the government and stuff, but like she's just been secluded and she doesn't really know stuff. Conceptually, that's fine. Execution, eh. She feels like she got plopped into the start of the start of the story, and has no backstory, unlike the other two boys. But that's whatever. I liked the build up of it at the beginning, where Jory and Kai both disguise themselves to meet each other before they are supposed to be met in an official setting. And then they have a conversation about what they want for each other, what they want for the deals and their kingdoms and stuff like that. That's good. But then immediately the plot goes downhill. I hated the plot here because I was like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Why are we, Asher finds out that he needs to kill Jory and Kai. And so he goes to Jory. He's like, we have to run away. You have to go over there. I'm going to go kill the king. And then you go run away. Because if I don't kill you, someone else is going to come and kill you. But she's like, I'm not going to leave him because I like him because he wants to do good for his kingdom. So we're going to kidnap him. We're going to kidnap him and then take him away. And that brings us into a plot that just felt so annoying, because I was like, these are really interesting characters. These are really interesting interactions that we're having, and you are squandering that for bad, stupid decisions that do not advance the story in interesting ways. I think it would have been a lot more interesting to have Jory and Kai have that conversation as it happens, and then Jory be like, I need you to listen to me. Do not do anything. This is my best friend Asher. He's blonde and he wants me, and he needs to kill us, but he won't do that. So this is how we're going to advance the story. That would have been a lot more interesting. And also, the characters, they're really well written. At times, Jory surprised me because she is so naive, but she does things that surprise herself. Like she punches people, slaps people. She's like a secluded princess, but she's like in the middle of a fight and she's like, actually, I'm going to attack. And it's not effective, but it still surprises the person who she attacked. So that was pretty fun. This book was trying to think of a story to bring about specific romantic tropes that I could see plainly, and like specific situations to put these characters in situations with each other. How do we put these two characters to do this specific thing that's built around that, which I'm fine with. I like doing that as a writer, but it felt weird. It felt stupid. Why are we like the moment that Asher and Jory kidnap Kai? That was absolutely stupid, and I hated that. It also squanders a semi-decent political conflict because the Ice Kingdom. They're not called the Ice Kingdom, but the Ice Kingdom where Jory lives and the Fire Kingdom where Kai is the king of. The Ice Kingdom needs protection against the Dragon Kingdom, and the Fire Kingdom needs food from the Ice Kingdom. So they're gonna work together so that Fire Kingdom can protect the Ice Kingdom. Ice Kingdom will give Fire Kingdom food, and then the Dragon Kingdom will be there. I think that's an interesting political conflict, but also the plot didn't allow that to develop until small parts near the very end, and that was so annoying. This story felt like it could have been an email. Like there's a duology. The second book won't come out until like later in November, and I will be reading it mostly so I can be proven that this is not a good series, or at least I didn't like the series. I'm also trying to coalesce all the thoughts that we talked about in my book club about this. This could have been an email, but also the world building sucks. Like this story is more than anything a character driven story, not a plot driven story or whatever. But I wish if it was a character driven story, that's fine. That's fine. The world building sucks. The map here is go on, girl, give us nothing. What is this map? This map is so boring. This map is so plain, and I hated it. I hated how the world was set up, but has some semi-interesting political conflict that was still squandered by the horrible plot. The best thing about this was the characters, and I did like them. I also like that the side characters, because Kai has like a retinue of soldiers that he soldiers with, and they were really good. They did not overshadow the characters, but they still stood out in their own ways, which I liked. Oh, also, I'm so sorry. This is also very important. Uh, this is not a love triangle. This is literally a polyamorous relationship, which I knew coming in, and I was excited to see that. And I really like the build up for each of those relationships. And the three of relationships felt different from each other, but still worked as a whole. Like Kai and Jory felt romantasy coded. I'm not a fan of romantasy, but I've read some romantasies, so it felt very similar to those. Jory and Asher felt very YA romance coded, YA fantasy. I've read a lot of those, felt very similar. But then Asher and Kai's relationship felt dark romance, adult romance coded, and I liked that a lot because hello, homosexuals. But the three of them end up loving each other. And that was really well built up, and I really like that. There is a really long extended sex scene at the end of this book that was not bad, much better plotted and paced than the fight scenes. Like some people have talked about how fight scenes and sex scenes have to be very similar in how you deal with them. And the fight scenes here, action scenes, were not that well written, but the sex scenes were. So I don't know what this says about this author. But yeah, I also set this book up for failure. This is a library book because I did not expect to like this book, and I did not want to spend money on it, which is good because I did not like this book. However, I mean, some parts of it are taste, and some parts of it are, yeah, this was kind of bad, but this is not a book for me. So maybe such a lackluster, let's not try, maybe such a less intense world is fine for others for what they want to read, but not for me, etc. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. At least the characters, which is the focus of this story, were really good. So I will commend it for that. But yeah, I am glad that I did not buy it. I hated this book. Sorry, that's too strong. I disliked this book a lot. And I will read the sequel when it comes out because I am kind of interested in this political conflict between the Ice Kingdom, the Fire Kingdom, and the Dragon Kingdom. The next book that I read, Asterisk, is The Expanse Origins by James S.A. Corey, Hallie Lambert, Georgia Lee, Juan Danlan, Triona Farrell, and Juan Asiche, which is a prequel, character prequel graphic novel, or just a comic books, I want to say, of it's like a prequel story for each of the main characters. I believe I saw that each chapter came out as an individual story, and then they were compiled into this omnibus with an added chapter as well. So I think that's pretty good. That's pretty smart. I mean, this is based off. This is the origins of the characters of the Expanse, which I've been reading, and it has stories for Holden, Naomi, Amos, and Alex, and then also Miller, which I was like, okay, I guess Miller, but Miller has been a lot more important than I expected. But anyways, I read this pretty quickly. I don't tend to read comic books, but I did find this at a used bookstore, and I've been reading The Expanse. So I was like, might as well. It's cheap. Let me buy it. It was like 5 cents, and I read it in like less than like 2 hours, less than that. Uh, I don't think I read comic books correctly because I like fly through them. I don't fully know if that's how you're supposed to read them or not. But either way, it was good insight into the backstories of the characters, especially for Miller and Amos, because the way that they touch on their backgrounds is a little iffy in the actual stories themselves, in the actual full length Expanse books. So this helped color some stuff in that I didn't fully understand. I'm not rating this because I read it so quickly. I'm not fully confident that I'm reading these correctly. And it's like, did I love this? No. Did I hate this? No. It was just something that I consumed. But I wanted to touch on it because I did read it, and it's part of the Expanse series, and I've been wanting to read the entire series this year. So yeah, uh, I mean, it was fun. I liked the art work here. There were some sections where the panels seemed to dissolve, like it was a memory or a dream, and I liked that a lot. And it was pretty emotional and really striking. So I did like it, but I'm not gonna rate it because I don't want to. And yeah, and the last book that I read in the month of July was Cibola Burn by James S.A. Corey, the fourth book in the Expanse series. I gave this a 4 out of 5. Unfortunately, the series is going down a bit in quality, but not by much. The first two were 4.75s, and then the third book was 4.25. This book's a 4. And I can feel it more as like a trying to stretch out a story over than what it should be. But I'm hoping, I've heard that the next book's really good. I've heard, so I don't know. But I will stick with it because I really like the characters, really like the story, I really like the world. The side characters have been better this book, but also I want to keep going. Eventually I will get Bobby and Avasarala back because I loved them so much. But anyways, 4 out of 5. This one was good at the beginning. So, it after the events of Abaddon's Gate, which is the third book. Well, okay, in Caliban's War, the second book, which so far has been my favorite book, the protomolecule has sent out a thing into space, which became a ring that was a gateway into other worlds. And at the end of Abaddon's Gate, those rings opened, and now humanity has access to other planets. And all those planets have been cleared of intelligent life uh, due to the thing that killed the aliens that created the protomolecule. But humans, being humans, did a what's the term, like slapdash run to colonize those planets. And the first planet to be colonized by humans is Ilus. And those colonists are trying to make a life for themselves. There's a mining there for lithium, which is a rare mineral. But at the same time, the UN has given this planet to a corporation that has arrived at this planet and wants to kick these colonists out. You guys are illegal here, and this is our land. Now Holden has to mediate the conflict between the colonists and the corporation that wants to control the world, this alien world. Something that I should have done for like the first three. Each book has Holden's point of view, but then new points of view for different characters. In the first book, it was just Miller, but in the second and third book, and now this book, it was three new characters, which I liked. So I should have talked about those individually, but we'll do that now. Also, before that, the new characters in the former books were new characters, yes, but these new characters are connecting to some characters or stories in the past, which I liked. I was really surprised about that. So the new characters we get Beisia, who is a father of one of the colonists in Ilis. He was the father of one of the children that was taken by it was Maukakowski in Calvin's War, which was where Prax's daughter was taken by them as well. Beisia had left Ganymede before the crisis happened on Ganymede. And so Beisia, after that, is now here in Ilis, and he's trying to make a living with his family here. And he gets embroiled in a cell within the colonists who want to expel the company that is coming to take their land, basically. I liked Beisia. He felt not useless, but his expertise was not as necessary in this story as like other point of view characters were. Mostly there was times where I was reading his sections and I was like, it was just so that we got to move him this over here so that we have a point of view character in this location to experience something that happens. But I did like his insistence for his family, wanting the best thing for his family and wanting to save his, when a crisis happens, save his daughter, the insistence, and it was a dogged need to help his daughter and family, and that was really nice to read. The next new character is Elvie, who is an exobiologist working for the RCE, the Royal Charter something. I forget what the company is called. Elvie was interesting in concept. She was a shy exobiologist that focused a lot on biology and didn't really know how to communicate with people, but mostly because she was just so passionate about the science and stuff, and she really wanted to learn about a new Royal Charter Energy is the company. She was really excited to go with this company to learn new biology about aliens divorced of humans. She's a little disappointed that there was already settlers there, but she'll deal with that. Halfway through, she gets a little focused too much on Holden, and it's mostly because she was horny, and I was kind of about that, but she gets over that pretty quickly, and then is just. I liked when she was focused so much on the biological stuff. I understood most of what she talked about. I have a biology degree. Am I doing anything with it? No, but I understood what she talked about, and that I really liked that aspect. So, like in concept, Elvie was good. In execution, not the best. Is it a symptom of men writing women? I don't know, but it definitely felt something akin to that. And the other character was Havelock, who was Miller's partner on series in the first book. And Miller had told him, hey, you should get out before it gets worse because Havelock is from Earth. There's a lot of conflict between Earthers, Martians, and Belters. So Havelock is the security officer on the RCE, and he stays most of the time in space. I liked him. Unfortunately, I did like him because he was just he's very monotone. He's very like one note, but you can tell that he wants to do good, and his actions all make sense. It felt almost like he was an unreliable narrator because he made the main antagonist look good, and I like that. I was like seeing how the main antagonist Murtry treats other people and how Holden didn't like him and the stuff that he says when he's on the planet is terrible, but seeing how he's seen through Havelock's lens was really interesting aspect that I did like that part. But Havelock has this moral standing that was very strong, and I like that aspect of the character. And then once the characters work together, him and Beisia have this like really interesting interaction and stuff because they are on opposite sides, quote unquote. But yeah, and I've been tiptoeing around this. The story starts off pretty good with this societal, political, economic conflict. Because yes, this is two different civilizations, quote unquote, coming together. Colonists from Ganymede and corporate group. And also, we have also seen LV and Havelock in this corporate group, so it's not all the entire corporation really bad. And also, we've seen some terrorists and bad people in the colonists, so it's not all the colonists are good. So there's, heroes on both sides, very Star Wars to Clone Wars, right? And so we have Holden coming in as a peace mediator. I like that aspect. Okay, how is this going to develop? And I liked that there was things happening on both sides. The inciting incident here is that the terrorist cell accidentally sets off a bomb that destroys the first shuttle that is coming in from the colonists, or sorry, the company, and that kills a handful of people. LV is a survivor of that shuttle that was accidentally blown up. So that's the inciting incident. I was really excited to read all that. But then, like halfway through, I guess the opposite of a Deus Ex Machina, a natural disaster occurs, and then the conflict and the story switch to focusing on surviving that. And yeah, there is aspects of Miller. He's been appearing to Holden as like a ghost, basically, telling him that he needs to go investigate something about the protomolecule. There is something here that he cannot reach. Someone has to go in and find something about that. I get that that's why this natural disaster thing happened, but I don't think it was needed because it really took over this large conflict that was not that fun to see take over, like halfway through, a huge earthquake storm occurs, and the characters have to work together now, and they have to survive this disaster. And then after that, the alien defenses stop the ships in space from getting supplies to them, and also the ships are antagonistic to each other. They're about to die as well, so there's trying to survive there. The story becomes a man versus nature conflict, which I'm fine with, but it's not the most compelling stories for me to read or for me to write. They're trying to survive one thing. They solve one problem after another problem that's solved, another problem that's solved, another problem that's solved that. And it was fine, it was good, but the instigating conflict of these colonists versus these corporation was a lot more interesting than what is happening with the natural disaster. And the natural disaster takes up the entire rest of the story. The most interesting parts to me, the natural disaster came because of the alien, the protomolecule. The protomolecule remnants took out all the power in the ships. And so Naomi on the Rocinante and the corporate ship and the colonist ship, their power sources are down. And at the same time, Naomi is kidnapped by the corporate ship. And so the three of them are in this like weird conflict that they have to deal with, that is with like mostly with Beja and Havelock. I like that. That was really interesting because it was separate from the natural disaster man versus nature conflict. The three ships felt like Interstellar, felt like Gravity, felt like those types of sci-fi stories that we've seen on big screen. But the on the ground issue was not so interesting to me. It was fine. It was good. It was well developed, well written, and I liked Holden and LV there dealing with all that. And then the main antagonist, Mercury, as I said, started off. We first see him through Havelock's eyes, so he looks like just a good boss, but then becomes worse and he becomes a little cartoonishly evil, and I did not like that aspect that much. But that's fine. It's fine. I will not say that I was disappointed with this book, but I'm disappointed that the quality has gone down just a little bit, a tad little bit. But I'm definitely wanting to continue this series. I was just, why is this again? The plot, the plot changed now, different than here. The plot just started off bad, but here it's like the plot just shifted, and I'm like, okay, now what? I liked at the end we got like an epilogue. We got bookended with an epilogue is before, and then prologue is after, right? No, I always forget. The prologue is before, and the epilogue is after. That's it. We got a prologue with Bobby, who she saw the news event about the explosion that happened. And then we get an epilogue of Avasarala, who is meeting with Bobby on Mars. I like that. Those are my two favorite characters. And Avasarala tells Bobby in ways that I don't fully understand, but I do. The way that she described it, I wasn't fully understanding, but I get what she's saying is that because Holden succeeded, she hired Holden to fail because she knew that he was. I didn't understand that aspect, but because Holden succeeded in keeping the peace between the colonists and the corporation, that means that humans have the ability to go to other space and go to other locations, and that means that the power base of Mars is gonna drop, and it's gonna lose some people. People are gonna be leaving Mars to live in these other locations, and that means that Mars's political power, I believe, is from what I'm understanding. I believe Mars's political power will be spread thinner and less powerful against Earth and the Belters, because now we're having a fourth body politic that is mostly people from Mars leaving to go to these new areas. And that's going to cause some conflict in the overall scheme of power, because already there is an imbalance, or not an imbalance, but there's a fragile balance between Earth, Mars, and the belts. But now we're going to get in where we have a new power of people living in alien planets. That's going to cause issues. So, hey, Bobby, I'm gonna hire you back. You're gonna start doing work, which I hope means that Bobby will continue to be, if not a POV character, a main character. So that's exciting. That's fun. But yeah, that was all the books that I read in the month of July. I mean, there's the lowest rated book here is a 2.5, but nothing else goes lower than a 4 besides this unrated comic book. So this month started off really good, even including the Animorphs books. I think ending the month, as I have been doing with the Expanse, has been really good to me. So it's always a good thing to end with. Book of the month, I need a book of the month to get better options. I'm like so close to unsubscribing. I just need better options, please. Stay tuned for in beginning of August, I might say, is when I'm going to be releasing my video talking about the books that I read for Isabel's Summer Slasher. So, yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to be passionate. And I'll see you later. Say goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.